Let's join our hearts together in prayer. Holy God, may the words from my mouth and the meditations in all our hearts be acceptable in your sight. Amen. What are some of the questions you might have or the topics you might broach if you were going to just have small talk with someone? The weather. Literally everyone said the weather at the same time there. The condition of your back lane. Okay, the weather, condition of your back lane. Any other ideas? How's your family? Yeah. If you're having small talk, how do you answer, how's your family? Fine. Yeah. Any other ideas? The Jets, talking about the Jets. Yeah. Aches and pains. Okay, so what are some of the things you might ask or topics you might cover if you wanted to have a more in-depth conversation or if you wanted to develop a relationship with someone? Politics. Okay. Yeah, diving right in. Climate change, for sure. Books, films, yeah. Religion. You know, anyone else love Community, the TV show, as much as I do? I don't think there's too many. There's a few. There's one line in it where one of the characters, Jeff Winger, is trying to meet another character. I think it's the first episode, Britta. And she says she's not into small talk. And he says, I'm not into small talk, so what's your deal? And she says, that's not small talk? What's your deal, and is God dead, is what he says. And that's how he engages the conversation with her. It's like that idea. Just dive right in, hey? Anything else? How the family really is. Yeah. Okay, they're fine. How are they really? Or you're fine. How are you really? Yeah. What's the difference? More personal. I was giving you hints throughout the service. I heard it over here. Vulnerability. I think that's the difference, ultimately, is vulnerability. Vulnerability is when we put our true self out there, right? And that comes with tremendous risk. Tremendous risk. There's a reason that we develop egos. There's a reason that we develop habits. There's a reason we set up walls around ourselves. And it's all about caring for ourselves. It's about setting up protections for ourselves. It's all about keeping ourselves safe. So if anyone ever says to you, oh, ego's a bad thing, or the goal of religion is to get rid of ego, it's not. Okay? Ego, it can be a good thing. It keeps us safe. But the problem is it's not the whole thing, right? It isn't our whole self. So being vulnerable is about exposing who we truly are to the world. And that's hard, and that's scary. And that's what Jesus is doing in our story for today. Right? Jesus, after spending 40 days in the wilderness, is tempted by the devil. And this story, it's not a story about Jesus' divinity. This is a story about Jesus' humanity. Right? And again, the devil offers Jesus opportunities to live into his divinity, and each time, Jesus chooses his humanity. Right? He's hungry, and the devil says to him, well, you can make bread from these stones, do it. And Jesus says, no, that's not who I am. The human part of me, the part that everyone on earth has, can't provide for themselves. No matter what our Western capitalist myth tells us, we are fundamentally dependent upon others for survival. Even the most extreme survivalist cannot survive without the earth, without the sun, without the rain. Right? A part of my faith, my Christianity, is understanding that all that upon which we're dependent is God. Right? So we cannot survive on our own. That's part of being human. The devil says to Jesus, see all this land? That could be yours to control. And Jesus says no. Because the truth is, no human can control everything. Can you control everything in your life? You can. All right, well, keep living a little, and we'll see. We'll see. Because you can't control everything in your life. You just can't. No human can control everything. In Jesus' day, the most powerful person, possibly in the world, but certainly in Jesus' world, would have been the Caesars. And there are stories of Augustus, the first and arguably the greatest emperor, depending on how you use the term great, roaming around, and he's lamenting the loss of 3 whole legions in a battle in the Teutoburg Forest, and he's walking around the halls crying out, "Where are my legions?" Where, like almost mad. Like he just can't control everything, and he's lost something that he just doesn't have control, and it almost drives him mad. We can't control everything. And finally, the devil offers Jesus a chance to prove that he's invincible. Throw yourself from this high place, and God will send angels to save you. And Jesus says no. Because being human is about being aware of our mortality. Right? And also, being human is about having big doubts about things. If Jesus threw himself and was saved by angels, he wouldn't have doubts. He wouldn't have questions. He would know fully about God. How can you be human if deep down you don't have doubts? If you don't have worries, you don't wonder what's going on in the world, what else there is. So in every one of these temptations, Jesus chooses his humanity. In every one of these temptations, Jesus chooses vulnerability. Because being vulnerable is being human, and being human is being vulnerable. And our world doesn't really let us be vulnerable. Maybe especially for men and boys. I'm cautious saying that. But often the language of vulnerability comes with, it's equated with weakness, right? And there's a subtle and not so subtle messages that come to all of us, but perhaps just in their own unique ways to men and boys, about weakness. In the age of hypermasculinity, the idea of being vulnerable is frowned upon. But there's a myth here, right? Because vulnerability requires tremendous strength. It's really hard to be who you truly are, to give outward voice to that inward voice. We spend our whole lives creating images of who we think we're supposed to be, right? And trying to live into that, trying to convince ourselves that it's true. I mean, just look at some of the people that we feel especially anxious about in our world today. I suspect these are people who have spent and continue to spend tremendous amounts of energy convincing themselves that they are a certain way because they are absolutely terrified of who they truly are. We spend our whole lives trying to distract ourselves or convince ourselves that we aren't frail, that we couldn't die at the drop of a hat, that if people are poor, it's because they didn't work hard enough. Right? We spend our whole lives trying to convince ourselves that we have control. You know, if someone's sick and dies, well, it's because they didn't eat the right things or they didn't do this. If someone's, has a really tough time, it's consequences. We just need to feel like we're in control. And it's really hard not to feel like we're in control. Right? It's really hard not to be fully self-sufficient. It's really hard to admit that we're not 100% sure about something. But we aren't. Deep down, we're not. We're not sure about anything. We're not self-sufficient. We're not in control. We're just humans. Marvelous, wonderful, frail, strong, fierce, scared, passionate, contemplative, worried humans. To not be vulnerable is, in some ways, I think, idolatrous. It's to deny our humanity, to declare ourselves God. If you aren't vulnerable, it just means that you're scared of yourself. It means you're scared about pushing back against who the world tells you you're supposed to be. And all of us are scared of ourselves at some time, or at least scared of recognizing ourselves at times. And so we need vulnerability. We need to know how human we are, how utterly dependent upon the God of life and love in the world we are. And so that's what Lent is all about, right? Lent is all about being vulnerable. These ashes that we have on our heads, right? You are dust, and to dust you will return. Well, we don't like to hear that. I mean, I don't like to hear that. When I'm doing it, I'm always like, sorry, you are dust, and to dust you will return. Sorry is kind of what's going through my head. Moving towards the cross, all of these speak to a vulnerability that is at the core of our humanity. We need vulnerability. We need it to remind us of our humanity. We need vulnerability so we can learn who we truly are, so that we can see those around us for who they truly are. So that we can be our truest selves in the world. The people that we were made to be, not the people that we tell ourselves that we're supposed to be, or that the world tells us that we're supposed to be. We need vulnerability so that we can recognize within ourselves the people that we were made to be. Knit together by a loving Creator, and asked to live as ourselves truly in this world. Thanks be to God. Amen.